Well, we're back at Garland Brew Werks. That white bag there is, let's take a peek at these, Adam. These are our fresh hops. These were literally on the vine in the field about 6 or 7 hours ago.
They smell
in
amazing.
Yakima. They do smell amazing. If you tear them apart, they smell even better.
Yeah.
So, okay, Adam, what do we got going here? You've been working on some stuff while I've been driving.
Yeah, we started a brew earlier today while you were grabbing those hops. We've got it right in here at the tail end of the boil here. We're whirlpooling right now. We're gonna get all the protein and gunk from the mash kind of centered up here so that when we do finally knock it out, it's gonna be nice, clean, clear wort. And then we're gonna basically take this wort here, we're gonna load all these hops back into our mash tun. This is typically where the grain goes, but in this particular case, we're gonna use it as what we call a hop back, which means it's gonna act like a big filter for us. We're gonna bring this hot wort in, let these guys soak in a bath of that hot wort for a few minutes till we extract all the goodness out of them. And then we're gonna bring it back over to the kettle to finish everything out normally like we would with any other beer. Knock it out into a fermenter. We'll pitch some yeast this afternoon and it should be ripping away by this evening.
What are these hops that we went and got this morning?
These are a variety called Sabro. They're a newer variety, and some of the key characteristics of Sabro, which are kind of unique, very tropical fruits. A lot of folks say they get coconut and even like a creamy vanilla character from them, and also like stone fruit, like peach or apricot in there as well. So they're an absolute like tropical fruit bomb that I think is going to be really nice in this beer. So I'm kind of excited to use these this year.
That is awesome. And you mentioned that when you put it back into the, is this the brew kettle?
Yeah.
When we put it back in the brew kettle, you're going to throw in a couple other hops just to kind of tame it down?
Yeah, absolutely. It's bring a little balance. We definitely want the Sabro to be the star of the show, but you know, with those kind of creamier notes, I also want this beer to be a little punchy, bring up those citrus character that's in the Sabro. So we're gonna add just a little bit of Simcoe and a little bit of Citra in here too. They're gonna be good friends. They're gonna play together well, but they're just gonna let the Sabro kind of be at the best it can be. I love the way it looks in there. Yeah.
I gotta go, man. That is beautiful. That green reflecting
Right?
off of the kettle there. Oh man, that is amazing.
We'll even kick on the rakes right now just to kind of stir them up, and it does help to break them up a little bit. I mean, some breweries will destroy them just to get as much surface area exposed as possible. I've seen weed whackers used. I've seen breweries run these through like a grain mill and mush them up.
Wow.
We'll
Actually,
do our best, but I think we've got plenty in there to get a lot of flavor out.
there was a trailer pulling out with several weed whackers on the back, and
I'm
I
sure
thought
that
they
was
were
their plan.
landscapers, but now I know what they really were. So this is, because the outside of these hops is not what we're looking for, it's the inside?
Correct, yeah. So inside those hops, if you break them apart, you'll see like some, it almost looks like pollen, some really yellow looking stuff. That is called lupulin. It is inside of those little sacs, essentially, are just all the compounds that we know and love in hops that add the flavor, the aroma, and the bitterness to our beer. So along with that, we do, I mean, that is kind of the beauty of a fresh hop, is you do get a little bit of that like bright green character from these hops because they haven't been dried. They still have some, you know, moisture content in them. So you get that nice kind of pleasant grassy fresh flavor and fresh hops too that I absolutely love. So that's what's so unique about, you know, throwing an ingredient in that was literally picked from the field just earlier this morning.
It's excellent.
So what we're gonna do now, and I'm basically just gonna more or less use gravity here. We don't even have to pull the entire volume in, just enough to get all those hops swimming in the soup. So we're just gonna let the hot wort right now that's just been whirlpooling, we're gonna pull some nice clean wort into this mash tun, which is full of all of our beautiful Sabro hops, and we're gonna make hop soup, and it's gonna smell amazing here. No, you're good. So right now it's just kind of just using gravity to flow in here, and I'll probably kick the rakes on and just slowly let them spin. And after a while, we'll probably start seeing them start to float, and then I'll make sure they all get down and everyone gets a drink. But the steam's gonna start coming up here through the mash tun, and it's gonna smell awesome.
What's the temperature of this water that's coming in about?
Probably as it's hitting the hops, you know, we're probably dropping into like between 170, 180 degrees, which a lot of times is where brewers will target, like Whirlpool editions. That's where you're going to extract not as much bitterness, but you're going to get a lot of those really potent aroma and flavor compounds in that range.
We call this the Adam Boyd soup.
And it does, like I said, it doesn't take long with the contact with the hot water really start extracting those aroma and flavor compounds. So a few minutes, once I've seen that all the bright, beautiful flowers are now dull and brown looking, I know that all this wort has what it needs. It has the flavor you want. So as of right now, the majority of the hops have been certainly saturated. They're looking far less vibrant than they were just a minute ago.
Oh yeah, they're much browner.
Yeah, but
You can almost see some of the ones sitting up on those little teeth are still the green ones. You can see the difference.
and at this point, I mean, we're probably going to start draining this liquid back into the kettle because it has done its job. We've gotten some really great stuff in here. I can smell it. And that is like the beauty of using the mash tun as the hop back is the mash tun has a grate at the bottom for filtering the wort through the grain bed earlier on in the brewing process, but now it's also going to act as a filter for us as we're drawing the liquid out. So this is our grant, and in the early part of the brewing process, this allows us to use our pumps to draw the wort into the kettle, and now we're going to get a good view of the wort coming out of our hop back, going back into the kettle.
Oh, I see there, it's pouring out. And then when it's back in the brew kettle, it's not there very long until you move it to the fermenters.
We'll do it again for just a few more minutes just to ensure that we've got all our gunk in the center of the kettle, and I'm not going to suck any little bits of hop leaves and things into our heat exchanger, and then it's going to go right into our fermenter.
Which fermenter has the gift of this one?
Nibs over there in the corner.
Nibs in the corner?
Nibs in the corner gets this fresh out. Look at that, it just looks like...
So we still probably got some wort underneath the grate right now. But it's pretty much out of the hops in here.
This is just like one shade away from orange juice down here.
Let's take a look at that.
That is like
Oh, wow.
the lupulin and all those compounds are in there, adding that turbidity to that liquid.
Let's see what our brew kettle's looking like. Oh yeah.
And the really nice thing with the timing on this, brewing it Monday and then going to stay on Saturday, is we'll be able to pull the freshest, most active yeast from this batch and go straight into Boyd Estate and just keep the party rocking. It's like beautiful timing. So
How does that influence the fermentation process?
We'll have an efficient, effective, and very quick fermentation process.
Okay.
It's
Like it gets rid of the startup, basically?
totally.
Is that the idea?
Our cell count is going to be like in a perfect place where it's, by the time I'm probably moving the fresh yeast into the next batch, it's already going to be bubbling.
Wow.
And so the nice thing about these beers is that our turnaround time will probably be pretty short on these. So
That is awesome.
And so what I'm just going to do right now is just start that whirlpool process again just for a few minutes. Now, even at this temperature, we are like extracting bitterness from these hops. It's far less than it would be if we were boiling them, but that is just always something that brewers to keep note of, how important temperature is, even with hops late in the process, is that we're still pulling that out of there. Now, with this being an IPA, we have a pretty wide range of where our bitterness will go to still be a very drinkable beer. So, just because it's not boiling doesn't mean things aren't happening.
Whirlpool is over.
So right now we're pushing the hot wort through the heat exchanger. The heat exchanger was sanitized earlier today with very hot water, so right now we're pushing the water out. That's a valve right there by our tank. So once we see beer starting to come through that, then we close that up, open up the valve, and start filling up the tank.
I see. You're purging everything at the moment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the heat exchanger and this kind of system holds pretty close to about 5 gallons of liquid.
Wow.
So there is like a little bit, you try and maximize your loss within the system, and keep that in mind too as you're brewing, because you know, in a perfect world you'd extract every last drop of beer out of your system that you make, but it rarely does technology allow for that.
So is our sight glass gonna start dropping, or it is already a little bit slowly? Oh, now we're seeing. Man, you're right on it. I could barely tell that it changed.
Usually I can start to see just a little bit of bubbles. And a little bit of, honestly, it's sanitized water in there, so a little bit of water isn't going to hurt anything, so, you know.
And is this just pushing air out in that
so
bucket?
the tank just has air in it from being sanitized earlier today, so as it's filling, it's pushing the air out. And then later tonight, and for the next few days, if that is bubbling, it will be CO2 that's being produced.
Which is what's coming out of this guy over here.
Exactly.
Because we have our Pilsner that just went in 2 days ago?
Last week. Towards the end of last week. But it's actually very close to being done already.
Awesome.
And then crack this guy. As we knock out, what essentially is happening here is a couple different things. One, cold water, city municipal waters, running through this heat exchanger one direction, and the wort is running through it another direction. That water is picking up the heat from the wort and then transferring it back to wherever we run it. Right now we're running it back into our hot liquor tank so that we can recapture some of that water.
I see. So it's heat. This wort is heating the water as it comes through the exchanger, and then we're putting it into our hot water tanks.
So thermal exchange.
I see.
The wort is probably hitting that tank somewhere around, usually between 65 and 80 degrees Fahrenheit, which is right where we want it for yeast. But it's leaving this kettle at much hotter. Usually it's either coming up tail end off of a boil, so it's just over 200 degrees, or right now we've done the whole fresh hop process, so it's sitting up between 170 and 180 degrees. This water coming out that's taking away that heat can run anywhere from, you know, if the wort's a little cooler, like right now, probably around 100, 120 degrees to even hotter, like 160 degrees into there.
That's saving a lot of energy that we don't have to reheat water.
Exactly. And then we're also oxygenating the wort as it leaves too. We've got an oxygen tank here, which is flowing oxygen into a little air stone, essentially, that the wort is flowing through, and that is why now you can kind of see there's an air gap in here.
Yeah.
Oxygen's just flowing and stirring up throughout the hose in there. The first part of the fermentation process from yeast is a growth phase. The yeast get in the beer, they look around, they figure out how many friends they need at the party to effectively eat all the sugars, and they'll start to bud off and produce more yeast until they have the right cell density. They need oxygen to do that as part of that process. So this is really the one time that oxygen is helpful for us in the brewing process. The yeast are going to consume pretty much all this oxygen that's going in. Once they start fermenting the beer, we want oxygen to stay far away from us from there on out, because then it becomes a spoiling factor in the entire process. So.
And then once we get it in that tank, we'll be in there for, you said, about 2 weeks?
It will probably be done fermenting within 3 to 4 days, but there's still a few steps in the process. It doesn't necessarily mean that the beer's ready to drink at that time. We need our yeast to settle out. Not everyone enjoys a really chewy, yeasty beer. We need to make sure that the yeast have done their job properly, that they are completely finished working, that they've reconsumed any off-flavor byproducts they naturally produce during the fermentation process. Yeast, they have a pretty crazy party in there when they're going, but they're really good at cleaning up after themselves if we give them the right environment. So we give some extra time for that. We cold crash it. That helps with the filtration, sort of the natural filtration with gravity, and cleaning up the beer. So it might be done fermenting in 3 to 4 days, but it's probably at least another 3 to 4 days of just all of those steps. And then sometimes maybe even another week to let the beer sort of settle out, We carbonate it. So yeah, on average, most of the beers are coming out of here in about 14 days, sometimes 21 days for a turnaround.
All right, well, it won't be long and it'll be on tap. And I'm excited to taste it, especially because I drove these things all the way across the state of Washington.
You put some true sweat into this thing.